What's up, African family? This is the Ed Doctor, and welcome to the Ed Doctor YouTube channel and podcast. It's been a long time since I posted any educational content, but I'm back and promise to be more consistent with posting new information about the education of Black children. Today, I am going to begin a discussion of worldview and the deep influence worldview has on children as they develop within their individual communities in America, and how the worldview of European people permeates American education and the effects that has on the intellectual, emotional, and social growth of Black children. Specifically, we will examine the African and European worldviews, which serves as the operating systems for how each respective culture develops its values, perspectives, and institutions. By understanding these worldview frameworks, we can begin to see why Eurocentric education can be harmful to Black children, and why, in my opinion, it needs to be supplanted by a more African-centered educational process. But before we move forward, please click the like and share buttons. If you can, please support the channel via my cash tag below. This support allows me to continue bringing you pertinent information on the education of Black children. So, with that, let's dive into today's topic, education through the African worldview. In the previous video, I showed how the demographics of the American public school system have shifted significantly. The once majority white student population has now been surpassed by a growing number of Black and minority students. Due to this demographic shift, some education scholars, including myself, are advocating for changes in pedagogy, curriculum, and school culture to accommodate this new majority. For this educational shift to occur, significant financial, intellectual, and community investments are necessary. Financial investment is crucial for funding in-depth studies of educational settings, practices, and experiences from the perspective of Black children, helping to identify learning methods and processes specific to their cognitive needs. Intellectual investment involves leveraging the expertise of Black education scholars, researchers, and teachers to develop and implement effective African-centered educational strategies. Community investment entails the active participation and support of parents, community leaders, and organizations to ensure that the educational needs of Black children are being met. Currently, Black students experience an educational system in America designed by white people, for white people, and about white people. It is also a system deeply rooted in European cultural norms, worldviews, and preferences tailored to the cognitive and cultural needs of white children. This Eurocentric educational paradigm fails to recognize that different cultures prioritize different ways of knowing through their unique individual cultural worldviews and frameworks. Cultural worldviews have a profound influence on how children interpret the world, understand concepts, make connections, and apply knowledge. Therefore, to ensure effective learning, it is essential that American education actively facilitates Black children's learning within the Black cultural context. Educational experiences should be tailored to Black children's cognitive preferences that are informed by the cultural perspectives of Black people. This educational tailoring is necessary because most Black children begin learning and experiencing the world through an Afro-cultural base. Educators should recognize that the Afro-cultural foundation for Black children is critical for new learning. From a constructivist perspective, it forms the bedrock upon which most new experiences and knowledge for Black children are built, and these cultural experiences significantly contribute to Black learners' prior knowledge. By integrating elements from this Afro-cultural base into the learning process, educators can help Black students construct understanding in ways that are natural and intuitive to them. This is why the call from some Black education scholars for an African-centered or culturally relevant pedagogy have been so strong. When Black children enroll in school, they leave their Afro-culturally based learning context, the foundation of their continuous knowledge construction, and are placed in an alien Eurocultural learning context. Here they are expected to construct new knowledge from a European, i.e. white cultural base, which is unfamiliar and disconnected from their own cultural experiences. Adapting to this new Eurocentric learning context can be difficult for Black children, even with the cognitive flexibility they possess at this early age. This difficulty often results in misbehaviors, attention deficits, and poor academic performance. The incongruence between the European cultural base that is embedded in American education and the African cultural base that is embedded in the community and family lives of Black children within which Black children build their prior knowledge underscores the importance of understanding the first of two fundamental realities of Black people proposed by ancestor Dr. Asa Hilliard. Dr. Hilliard argues that to reach Black children educationally, educators must understand that the African worldview framework brought by Africans to America continues to operate within Black people. Therefore, educators must recognize and honor this African worldview in their teaching practices. This means creating learning environments that align with the cultural values, communication styles, and cognitive processes inherent in the African cultural base. So let's review. The demographics of the American public school system have shifted significantly, with Black and minority students now outnumbering the white student population. This change has led scholars to advocate for African-centered and culturally relevant pedagogies and school cultures that align to the Afro-cultural base within which Black children grow intellectually to better meet the needs of Black students. The current American education system is designed by and for white people and is rooted in European cultural norms, failing to account for the diverse ways other cultures prioritize knowledge through their own unique worldviews. Black children who begin learning through an Afro-cultural base often face challenges when placed in a Eurocentric educational context, often leading to misbehaviors, attention deficits, and poor academic performance. Therefore, it is crucial for education to incorporate African-centered pedagogies that align with the cognitive and cultural needs of Black students. This approach not only facilitates more effective learning, but also respects and builds upon the cultural foundations that Black children bring to the classroom. As stated earlier, one of ancestor Dr. Asa Hilliard's fundamental realities that teachers must understand to effectively teach Black children is that the worldview that African people brought with them to America persists within African people, and it is through this worldview framework that children of African descent construct their prior knowledge. Let's begin with a definition of worldview. Worldview can be understood as the operating system through which people, i.e., cultural groups, perceive and interpret the world around them. Through the filter of this operating system, groups develop beliefs, values, and assumptions that shape how cultural groups understand life, make decisions, perceive reality, and create the world around them. To go deeper into worldview, with respect to individual cultures, we will examine the work of two scholars, Dr. Edwin Nichols, who created the Philosophical Aspects of Cultural Differences chart, which presents a framework of various philosophical underpinnings and worldviews of different cultural groups, and the influence these philosophical aspects have on what groups value, how groups know, how groups transmit what they know, and how groups confirm what they know, and ancestor Dr. Kobe Cambone's comparative worldview schematic, which delves into the contrast between aspects of the traditional European and African worldview and how these worldviews inform the cultural ethos, which informs the values and customs that ultimately translate into psycho-behavioral modalities exhibited by both African and European peoples, particularly in America. But before we get started, I would like to acknowledge other scholars whose work focuses on reclaiming African history, culture, socialization processes, and worldviews from the Eurocentric narrative. These scholars have also played a large role in arguing that education should utilize sources and methodologies that reflect African perspectives and experiences. From left to right, we have ancestor Dr. Jacob Carruthers, ancestor Dr. Yvonne Bell, Dr. Marimba Annie, Dr. Kevin Wilson, Dr. Linda James Myers, and Dr. Wade Nobles. Let's begin our deep dive into Worldview by exploring the work of Dr. Edwin Nichols through examining the philosophical aspects of European culture. While our focus will be on contrasting European and African cultures, it's important to note that the Nichols chart also includes other cultural groups, such as Asians, Arabs, Latinos, and Native Americans. Our discussion will delve into how European and African cultures perceive and interact with the world across 4 key dimensions outlined by Nichols. The first is axiology, what cultures value. The second is epistemology, the nature or origin of knowledge. The third is logic, how groups reason. And the fourth is process, how groups confirm knowledge. By understanding the philosophical aspects of European culture, we will be able to clearly see that the underpinnings of American education are exclusively European and differ quite notably from the philosophical aspects of African culture, beginning with axiology or what groups value. Dr. Nichols contends that European people exist in a member-object orientation. This refers to a value system where European cultures place the highest value on the acquisition and possession of objects. These objects can be material possessions, achievements, or any material items that indicate success and status. For example, owning a luxury car or having an exalted job title. This means that success and self-worth are tied to and measured by what one possesses, such as wealth, property, or titles. Some of the implications of this European value orientation in the context of education are that European education values competition, individualism, and the selfish pursuit of personal goals. This framework often drives educational practices that prioritize individual achievement, test scores, and a competitive classroom environment. As a result, success is frequently gauged by personal accomplishments such as high grades or prestigious college admissions, resembling consumer behaviors where accumulating accolades and credentials becomes a key indicator of educational success and social prestige. The next key dimension in Nichols' chart is epistemology, the nature or origin of knowledge. Under this dimension of culture, Dr. Nichols has created 3 subcategories. The first category under this epistemology is applied, which asks the question, how do cultural groups know what they know? The next category under Nichols' epistemology is pedagogy, which asks the question, how do cultures transmit what they know? The last category under Nichols' epistemology is methodology, which asks the question, how do cultures implement what they know? The first in this category under epistemology is applied. How do cultures know what they know? Dr. Nichols contends that in American education, Europeans know what they know through the deeply rooted epistemological context of counting and measuring. Through this context, students are not only taught to think in terms of quantification, but are also guided to believe that the correctness and the truth of a question are determined through these processes. For example, counting emphasizes quantification, where knowledge is gained through numerical data such that students learn that an equation is only correct when it can be solved through a precise, standardized method, and that any scientific claims must be validated through measurable, repeatable experiments. This teaches students that knowledge is only legitimate when it can be quantified and verified empirically. Measuring focuses on determining dimensions, capacity, or quantity using standard units like feet, pounds, or kilograms. For example, in a physics lab, students might be asked to measure the velocity of a moving object using tools like a stopwatch and a measuring tape. The validity of their findings depends on how precisely they can measure and record the object's speed. This teaches students that scientific knowledge is only accurate when it it is grounded in precise, objective measurement, reinforcing the belief that truth and correctness in science are confirmed through exact, quantifiable data. This epistemological approach shapes students' understanding of the world, fostering the belief that truth and correctness lie primarily in what can be measured, counted, or quantified. It subtly teaches that ideas or knowledge that cannot be empirically measured holds less value or credibility, thus framing their perception of reality through this narrow lens of quantification and measurement. Next, we have pedagogy. How do cultures transmit what they know? Dr. Nichols contends that Europeans rely of part-to-whole thinking. In European culture, the epistemological approach to pedagogy often revolves around part-to-whole thinking, a method where complex ideas or systems are broken down into smaller, more digestible parts before being synthesized into a comprehensive whole. This approach values detailed analysis, encouraging learners to focus on individual components, studying them thoroughly, and then piecing them together to form a broader understanding. The assumption is that knowledge is best acquired by dissecting complex subjects into manageable units, which can then be reassembled to grasp the full concept. It aligns with an analytical and linear way of thinking, where understanding the parts is seen as essential to comprehending the whole. Another example can be seen in biology classes, where the study of the human body is often introduced through part-to-whole thinking. Students first learn about individual systems, such as the circulatory, respiratory, and nervous systems, by focusing on how each one functions in isolation. Detailed examinations of the parts, such as the heart, lungs, or brain, are prioritized. Only after mastering these individual systems do students explore how these systems interact to maintain overall bodily function. This approach trains students to understand that the key to grasping the complexity of the human body lies in first dissecting and analyzing its individual components before synthesizing the knowledge into a comprehensive understanding of how the body works as a whole. Finally, we have methodology, how cultures implement what they know. Dr. Nichols contends that European people utilize linear sequential methods to implement what they know. In European culture, the methodology of how people implement what they know often relies on linear sequential methods, which emphasize a structured, step-by-step approach to achieving goals, solving problems, or delivering instruction. This method values order, logic, and organization, with each step building on the previous one to ensure clarity and precision. The process is systematic, meaning that following a set plan or procedure is essential to success. This methodology reflects a preference for clear structure and incremental progress toward a final outcome, minimizing ambiguity and unpredictability. For example, in science classes, students are often taught to follow the scientific method, which is a classic example of the linear sequential methodology. The process begins with identifying a question or problem, followed by forming a hypothesis, conducting an experiment, collecting data, analyzing the results, then drawing conclusions. Each step must be completed in a specific order to ensure the experiment's validity. If any step is skipped or done out of order, the entire process may be compromised. This approach reinforces the belief that systematic, ordered steps are necessary for discovering reliable knowledge and solving scientific problems. The next dimension in the Nichols chart is logic, how groups reason. Dr. Nichols contends that European cultures often use dichotomous reasoning, also known as the either-or concept. In European culture, logic is often characterized by dichotomous reasoning, which frames ideas, decisions, and choices in strict either-or terms. This form of reasoning values clarity, precision, and finality, leaving little room for ambiguity or complexity. Dichotomous thinking demands clear, distinct categories. Things are either one way or another, with no middle ground. This black and white approach ensures decisiveness, but may overlook nuance and complexity in situations where multiple perspectives could exist simultaneously. An example of this reasoning context is classroom discipline, particularly under zero-tolerance policies, exemplifies dichotomous reasoning in American education. These policies operate on the premise that certain behaviors are strictly acceptable or unacceptable, with predetermined consequences regardless of context. For example, if a student is caught with a prohibited item like a cell phone during a test, they may face immediate suspension, even if the item was mistakenly brought in. Under zero tolerance, there is no room for considering the student's intentions, circumstances, or previous behavior. Actions are classified as either right or wrong, and punishment is automatically enforced. This either-or approach reflects the rigidity of dichotomous reasoning, where clear-cut rules and consequences are prioritized over a nuanced understanding of individual situations. The last dimension in the Nichols chart is process, how groups confirm what they know. According to Dr. Nichols, European cultures emphasize two key principles: repeatability and reproducibility to confirm knowledge. In European culture, the process of confirming knowledge often relies on repeatability, the idea that something is only valid if it can be consistently repeated with the same results, ensuring reliability and objectivity. This method is based on the belief that knowledge is only confirmed when the same outcome can be repeated multiple times under similar conditions. It emphasizes precision, consistency, and the ability to replicate results to establish truth and accuracy. This approach is foundational in both scientific inquiry and education, where reproducibility serves as the key measure for confirming what is known. In schools, students often confirm their understanding of a subject through repeated exercises. For instance, when learning multiplication, students repeatedly practice the same sets of problems until they can consistently arrive at the correct answer. This repetition helps both teachers and students confirm that the knowledge has been mastered. The more times students can reproduce the correct results, the more their learning is validated. This mirrors the European emphasis on repeatability, where consistent outcomes are the key to confirming knowledge. Reproducibility involves the ability to replicate results independently, often by different researchers or under different conditions, to confirm the validity of findings. In teacher education, reproducibility can be seen in the creation and testing of lesson plans. A lesson is deemed effective if it can be used by other teachers in different classrooms and still yield the same educational outcomes. For example, if one teacher designs a lesson that significantly improves students' reading comprehension, this lesson plan is tested by other teachers to see if they can replicate the success. If they can, the lesson plan is considered reliable and is often shared widely. This reflects the European value of reproducibility, where knowledge is confirmed when it can be consistently applied and produce the same results across different contexts. So let's summarize what we have gone over. In Eurocentric education, success is often tied to personal achievements and possessions, reflecting a value system that emphasizes competition, individualism, and measurable accomplishments, such as high grades or prestigious college admissions. Knowledge is considered valid when it can be quantified and measured, teaching students that correctness is proven through numerical data, like solving equations or replicating scientific experiments. This approach to teaching often follows a part-to-whole methodology, where complex ideas are broken down into smaller, manageable parts for detailed analysis before being synthesized into a broader understanding. Learning and problem solving are implemented through linear sequential methods, where students follow a structured step-by-step process, such as the scientific method, to ensure clarity and precision. The way reasoning is taught follows dichotomous thinking, where decisions are framed in either-or terms, as seen in zero-tolerance policies that judge actions strictly as right or wrong, leaving little room for nuance. Finally, for Europeans, knowledge is confirmed through repeatability and reproducibility, where students practice tasks repeatedly to achieve mastery and confirmation of fact. For example, the validation of a scientific experiment by other researchers who replicate the same results, ensuring consistency and reliability in what is studied. In essence, the American educational system, steeped in this European orientation, teaches students to prioritize test scores, measurable achievements, and structured processes. They are also taught that their self-worth is tied to these quantifiable outcomes, such as grades, accolades, or college admissions. This framework can create pressure to conform to a narrow definition of success, where academic achievements and personal value are measured through competitive, individualistic standards. To close this section of our series of presentations, let me say that understanding the Eurocentric cognitive framework is crucial when teaching children of African descent because it highlights the limitations of applying a one-size-European-fits-all approach to learning. African cultures often emphasize community, relationships, holistic learning, and non-linear ways of thinking, which may not align with the individualistic, competitive, and strictly measurable values of a Eurocentric system. We will see this quite plainly when we review the philosophical aspects of African culture in a few weeks. For students of African descent, learning may be enhanced by more communal, experiential, or intuitive approaches that value collaboration, creativity, and a broader view of success beyond test scores or individual achievements. Ignoring or not including these aspects of African culture can lead to disengagement, underachievement, and the invalidation of culturally relevant ways of knowing and learning. By recognizing the distinct cognitive orientations of students of African descent, educators can create more inclusive, supportive learning environments that honor diverse cultural perspectives, leading to more meaningful and effective education for all students. Thank you for watching this presentation, and again, click that like and share button and hit that bell to be notified of future presentations. You do not want to miss the next presentation in the series that will examine the philosophical aspects of African culture. So stay tuned for an insightful discussion that will explore the possibilities of how the philosophical aspects of African culture can transform educational practices, offering new pathways for culturally responsive teaching, learning, and student empowerment. You won't want to miss it. Finally, please support this channel via my cash tag. Till next time, peace.